The stock market's recent plunge has stirred alarming questions. Is the tech bubble on the verge of bursting? And if so, what does that mean not only for America's economic future, but also politically, especially under the Trump administration? In this podcast episode, Ben Shapiro dives deep into these pressing concerns, unpacking the intricate web of AI investments, market dynamics, affordability challenges, and the stark choices facing policymakers today. Yesterday's nearly 800-point drop in the Dow Jones sent a shockwave through an already jittery market. At the heart of the turmoil lies a complex tangle of financial commitments centered around AI payouts, money moving in circles among tech giants like Oracle, Nvidia, and private titan OpenAI. Shapiro illuminates how OpenAI, the private company behind ChatGPT, has been the nexus of billions in investments, primarily from publicly traded firms that end up channeling funds back into one another's pockets. It's a circular cascade of cash. OpenAI secures massive funding from Microsoft, Oracle, SoftBank, and others, only to spend those dollars buying computing power and chipsets from those same investors. But here's the crucial question Shapiro presses. Who will actually reap the financial benefits of this AI renaissance? While AI undeniably promises transformative productivity gains that will touch almost every job, it isn't clear if these profits will materialize in the coffers of the key players now betting heavily on AI's future. What if OpenAI's growth falters, or the AI promise takes far longer to deliver than investors expect? The precariousness of such heavy reliance on circular investments, akin to betting repeatedly on the same horse, could ignite a cascade of financial distress, dragging down stocks like Oracle, Nvidia, and potentially triggering a broader market slump. This skepticism about AI's immediate profit realization has contributed to a more cautious mood among hedge funds, who have been selling off shares lately, leaving retail investors to prop up a market increasingly described as frothy and bubble-like. Shapiro warns this doesn't necessarily spell an imminent crash, but does suggest a looming risk of stagnation as the economy's recent growth has become overly dependent on a handful of tech giants, the so-called Magnificent Seven, while the broader market barely moves. Underlying this market unease is the Federal Reserve's evolving stance on interest rates. Markets had been buoyed by hopes of a December rate cut, but those expectations have sharply waned. According to real-time odds from financial trackers, the Fed's next move teeters on an even 50-50 chance of a cut or no cut. Shapiro believes the Fed is unlikely to cut rates soon given persistent inflation and the ready availability of liquidity for businesses. What does that say about the resilience of the U.S. economy if investors are so sensitive to incremental rate changes? Market responses to these rate speculations signal underlying frailty rather than strength. As market jitters mount, Americans are grappling with the everyday reality of skyrocketing prices, especially in housing and basic goods. Shapiro unpacks the housing affordability crisis, recognizing that while historic comparisons to the 1950s often come up, today's factors, population density, urban demand, and regulatory hurdles, make a return to those days impossible. Yet, increased foreclosures are slowly adding supply back to the market, a mixed signal that underscores deeper structural problems. The Trump administration's recent moves to lower tariffs on essential imports like coffee and bananas reflect a tacit admission of how trade barriers have contributed to inflation and higher prices. Could the scaling back of tariffs across more sectors be a key lever to bring down costs? Shapiro argues in favor of free market solutions, deregulating, opening the supply chains for oil and gas, cutting red tape, and allowing market forces to meet demand naturally. He critiques socialism's redistributive tactics, suggesting that punishing the wealthy or expanding government intervention often backfires, raising costs instead of lowering them. Innovation and competition, not ever-growing government control, are the forces that create affordable, better quality goods and services. The Biden administration's criticism of the Trump-era's tariffs, its reliance on continued government spending, and persistent debates over Federal Reserve policies all underscore a deeper policy divide: free markets versus interventionism. The podcast also touches on political dynamics surrounding the Trump administration. While Democrats and some Republicans attempt to leverage Jeffrey Epstein-related documents and accusations against Trump, Shapiro remains skeptical of any new revelations emerging from the files, calling for transparency but warning of politically motivated smears. At the same time, controversies within Congress, such as investigations into Representative Matt Gaetz and Eric Swalwell, highlight the fraught nature of modern politics, where personal misconduct and legal scrutiny increasingly shape public trust. Meanwhile, on the ideological front, Shapiro highlights the growing influence of left-wing figures like AOC and Elizabeth Warren, who push for expansive redistribution and government control, contrasting sharply with free market conservatives who see innovation and capitalism as primary drivers of prosperity. Can either side offer genuine solutions amid economic uncertainty, or will partisan battles overshadow effective policymaking? Shapiro doesn't limit his analysis strictly to economics and politics. He draws attention to troubling signs in education, citing data from institutions like UC San Diego, where many incoming students lack basic math skills. He questions the value of woke ideology in classrooms, especially at Texas A&M, where new rules restrict teaching on gender and race without administrative approval. Shapiro suggests a return to core academic fundamentals and a rejection of ideological overreach as critical to America's long-term well-being, both economically and culturally.